And welcome back to Crash Bandicoot. Now, this is something that is unique to the Sane Trilogy, and thankfully they did it. If you wanted to go back to the original, the very first level, you'd have to travel all the way back. But in the Sane Trilogy, they added this little teleporter.
Convenient.
Yeah, so last time we beat all of the main levels, so we're just backtracking for the gems that we couldn't get last time.
Aha!
I accidentally forgot about Boulder Dash originally, so pay no attention to the discrepancy in percentage numbers between cuts.
There's a whole nother level down here.
Yeah, this is the only area in the game that looks like this. And I don't know, maybe it was a concept that they cut, but they kept this part in anyway. There are, as I mentioned before, there are cut levels, and we'll be discussing some of them at a later point in the updates.
Hooray!
You should have watched that first, Crash. So this episode is entirely about backtracking, and yeah, we're basically going through these old levels again. So in the meantime, it might be interesting for us to sort of recount some of the behind the scenes stuff regarding Crash as an intellectual property.
Oh, I love intellectual property law.
Yeah, it is surprisingly interesting. So, as I mentioned, I think it was in the last episode, maybe the one before that. Despite being a huge icon for the PlayStation and for Sony, Crash and Naughty Dog were contracted through Universal Interactive, which was a game studio through Universal Studios that eventually found its way to Vivendi, which is the one of the biggest French multimedia conglomerates.
Okay, so yeah, Vivendi is familiar to me.
Yeah, even though the developers changed, the actual rights didn't really change hands at a fundamental level. And so Vivendi, they contracted out other developers to work on Crash games. There was Crash Bash, which was done by Eurocom. That was sort of a Mario Kart style party game. And then it wasn't until the 2000s that we really started to see actual Crash games not developed by Naughty Dog. The first one was Wrath of Cortex. That was done by Traveler's Tales. They would end up working on a lot of the Crash games in the future. Basically, the IP was dormant starting around 2008, 2009. Okay. And in 2002, Vivendi suffered a huge fiscal year loss, one of the largest in European history. I think it's the modern day equivalent of something like 25 billion US. And from that point on, they spent much of the 2000s going on a fire sale with whatever departments they didn't need. And part of that included selling Vivendi Universal, which is what Universal Interactive had become, and they sold that to Activision. And that's how we got here. And there was a period of games where they were made by Radical Entertainment, which are not considered to be that good. Crash of the Titans, Crash Mind Over Mutants. There's also like a bunch of handheld stuff as well, mostly done by Vicarious Visions, under contract with Vivendi. So really, this is another developer coming back to the property.
So they're kind of saying, hey, we have the template for a good Crash game. We already made it, so we're just going to remake it.
Well, that's the thing. They kept changing the formula too much. After Wrath of Cortex was a little too adherent to the formula that had become as of Crash 3. And then it just it spent a good half decade wandering around in purgatory, not really sure what its own identity was. I mean, it was briefly revived as part of the Skylanders series, featuring fellow abandoned PlayStation mascot Spyro the Dragon. That was originally an attempt at rebooting Spyro, and then Skylanders became its own whole Toys to Life thing. Crash appeared as one of the toys in there, and he was voiced, and the voice was... we don't talk about Crash's voice in Skylander Adventures.
So you're saying it wasn't Nolan North?
No. Although, funnily enough, the voice acting in this game was done almost entirely by one man. His name was Brendan O'Brien, a member of Naughty Dog at the time, so they hired internally. And it wouldn't be until Crash 2 that we actually got some distinct voice actors for the other characters.
So that's... sounds like the kind of thing you would do on a budget title. I can't imagine it cost them much more than sanity to create this game, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's yeah. Basically, they were hoping that Crash would be a big hit, but they didn't know for sure. And it wouldn't be until Crash 2 that they actually got a decent budget to work with. There, in particular, we'll be hearing stories about Crash Bandicoot 3, which are quite ironic given what we know about certain things in modern Naughty Dog. But we'll get there when that comes by. Anyway, oh yeah, that's another thing about explosives. There was an embryo token hiding there that would have been missable if you had just used the TNT.
Aha.
I seem to remember that the third token was in a different location, like a little further, closer towards the end of the level. Maybe they just couldn't find a good place to put a platform there with their new system.
Probably. You did mention the physics are a bit different in this version than the original.
Yeah, the level design is almost one-to-one. There are some very, very small tweaks.
Would you say they're mostly quality of life or mostly by necessity?
Well, the thing is that Vicarious Visions didn't have access to any of the original source code, and they essentially had to eyeball everything by aggressively studying the original games and how they worked, and they had playtesters of old Crash players to make sure they got things as close as possible into the spirit of it. The physics changes that are here are meant to be quality of life, whether or not they actually are, even though I think most of them are.
I don't think you can collect any more lives.
No. Yeah, it caps out at 99. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on that right question mark box. That was where the original embryo token was. And, oh, yes, I need to talk about the marketing. Okay, so for those of you who didn't have the privilege of seeing how video games were marketed in the 90s, it wasn't a good time. There was a lot of playground insults and general pettiness. Crash, though, when Crash games were being marketed, there was an edginess, but it was very sort of self-deprecating. In particular, the North American marketing campaign has this guy in a Crash Bandicoot costume with a hole in the middle of his mouth for where the actor's head was very visible. He would go around with this microphone insulting the Nintendo headquarters and showing them how cool Crash Bandicoot was.
I do remember these. The most engineered guerrilla marketing you will ever see in your life.
Yeah, and it had a very different tone to it from what, say, Sega was doing, where they weren't even doing guerrilla marketing. It was just, straight up trash talking. But there was always something very wink and nod about the Crash commercials.
Well, you have to remember, Sega didn't have to do subterfuge. They did what Nintendo.
And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, it is basically it's like the tone of not just the marketing, but of Crash in general. You had, in comparison to say Sonic, where it was very much the intention to create the opposite of Mario, to make someone that teenagers could enjoy, where Mario was meant to be for kids. This one had it took the interactive cartoon thing a bit too, maybe not seriously, but they were dedicated to it, and really couldn't make Crash a hip character. Like, some of the early concepts were weird. For a long time, there was a concept art for a character called Willy the Wombat, and I think the development Bible still uses that name. That jump's a bit weird. This was the first time in a very long time I had played through this side area. In later years, especially with the to a lesser extent the Traveler's Tale stuff, but definitely the stuff made by Radical Entertainment, the series became even more comical and over the top, and a specific dedication to make things funny over things like good gameplay. Crash Twinsanity is absolutely about that. It got to the point where several of the commercials for Crash Twinsanity were crossovers with two of the main actors from Jackass, because there's a lot of emphasis of physical comedy in Twinsanity.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find those commercials now because I haven't seen them.
Yeah, and then unfortunately we get to the Radical Entertainment era. They were the ones who made. Was Radical Entertainment the ones who made Prototype? I think that was them.
I want to say yes.
Basically, Activision, being themselves, found the commercial failure of Radical Entertainment's Crash games to be the reason to shut them down. So that's why you don't have Prototype 3, kids. It's all because of Crash Bandicoot.
Which is unfortunate, because Prototype was a good game.
Yeah, I have the Xbox 360 version of it. I was gifted the PC version. I'm still trying to figure out how to make it work. It is not a good PC port.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's getting a patch.
Nah, really? Maybe if we bring Radical Entertainment back from the dead, they'll figure it out.
Just start emailing random developers that worked at Radical. Hey, why is this broken?
Anyway, this is another example of, at the very end of the level, you would have to just blindly jump towards these. You did not have these Wumpa fruits in the original.
Ugh.
At least this isn't a color gem level. That's all I can say.
I am going to have to deduct points at the end for Leap of Faith gameplay.
Yeah, it's yeah, feel free to deduct those points, because the other two are much better. Oh, yeah, while I left those Wumpa fruits there, I guess I should point out, for no particular reason, that in Japan, the Wumpa fruit was renamed to apples. Not entirely sure why that particular choice was made. There's some other ones that make more sense. Things like the TNT crate becomes just a cartoon bomb icon. Just to make it a little easier to read for those who couldn't read the English alphabet. There are some very interesting stories about having to hack the game even further in order to have it accept the Japanese alphabet. Also, this is a new enemy that only shows up on certain paths of Cortex power. Before, we had the fat Potoroo called Fat back at Toxic Waste. That was Slim. Very original name.
Well, they didn't bury any leads with those.
Oh, I think I'm hearing them now. Okay, for context, we're recording this on July 3rd. And,
my backyard is a war zone. Happy Independence Day, folks.
yeah, this will probably be August by the time this gets uploaded, but happy very belated 4th of July. I also use that move right there. That is a physics exploit that is unique to the Sane Trilogy. You get some extra coyote hang time when you use your spin attack. It's only really useful in the first game because the moves that Crash gets access to in the later Crash games mean that, it's not particularly useful. But it certainly is useful in this one. I've been avoiding using it until now, just to give you a better experience of what it's like to play this normally. Yeah, Cortex power is it is unique in that it focuses much more on split paths and having to backtrack, and the camera system in Crash 1 is very bad in both the original and in this one.
See, no. It's bad in the first one. It's authentic in this one.
Yeah, authentic. Like I like the things I've heard about the remake of Medieval, which is painfully to a fault replicates everything about the original.
It's just the original, only pretty. No, the original had bad things.
And Coco gets a slightly different shivering animation in Road to Nowhere. And the Slim does something weird. Also, this is something I've been meaning to show off. If you manage to break every crate in a level, but you die in a color gem level, you get a unique end result screen. Yeah, she knows you fucked up, and she's not happy about it. So we have one and a half levels, I guess. Well, it'll make more sense when we get to the other update, but just the final boss and like a semi-level. Again, it'll make more sense in context. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Next time is going to be a double update because again, if you don't already know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to spoil it for you. There will be 2 parts. One will be the final boss, and the other is the thing. You'll know what it means.
The thing. Look forward to that thing.